Hello everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to join the Climate Justice Advisory Board, or as we endearingly refer to it, CJAB, for our final meeting of 2023. Our work is only possible with the support and involvement of each of you. My name is Alice Wagner-Hempstead.
And I'm Dominique Diadigo-Cash.
And we are the co-chairs of this board. We would like to thank St. Paul Parks and Recreation for letting us use this space and allowing this event to happen. Lastly, we want to thank our fellow past and present CJAB members for digging into this important work. Before introducing Mayor Carter, we wanted to share a few words to welcome you to our first public meeting. We want to open tonight with a land acknowledgement, but one that is also a call to action.
As we stand on this land, we acknowledge the Dakota people as the original inhabitants and rightful occupants, and strive to prevent the further legacy of settler violence on all Indigenous communities today. As we acknowledge the history of this place we call St. Paul, it's important that we commit ourselves to undoing the historical harms that displaced them from their sacred homeland. And that is not only here, but everywhere that we plant our feet. Before the expulsion of the Dakota from this area, a series of broken treaties, economic sanctions, and land theft had already marginalized them. In efforts to fight back and protect their land, they were driven into combat by the U.S. Army, who would use this resistance as justification for genocide. What is now known to be genocide was for 200 years portrayed as the triumph of American settlers. Because we can't undo the harms of the past, we must acknowledge them, listen to those who were affected, and commit ourselves to dismantling the systems they created. The board is committed to grounding all of our work in equity and justice, and we maintain an environmental justice lens and include multiple voices and perspectives in our discussions, proposal reviews, and feedback to the city.
This board grew out of the work that St. Paul residents and city officials did to create the Climate Action and Resilience Plan in 2019. This plan aims for the city to be carbon neutral by 2050. The board is made up of volunteers who represent a wide spectrum of people who are affected by climate change, who are educated about climate change, and who are interested in building solutions for it. We are able to hear from a variety of organizations working to better the St. Paul community. In the past, we have been able to help amplify important work related to climate justice that is happening at grassroots level. We believe in the expertise of all of St. Paul's residents and aim to serve as a connector between community members and city officials. We emphasize looking at these issues through a climate justice lens, making sure that decisions being made are not being made just for profit or to be completed in the fastest way possible, but to benefit everyone in the community, specifically groups that have been overlooked in the past. We believe our board is stronger when the voices of those communities are leading. We're always welcoming people to apply and have several openings available now.
We can only call it climate justice when the voices of those affected are at the table. The historical exclusion of certain voices is not an accident. Marginalized people have been silenced in order for others to benefit from the status quo. The opportunity to build cleaner, more sustainable systems is also an opportunity for us to build more just systems. The power to enact change doesn't just live in the offices of politicians or the ballot box. The same year that St. Paul adopted the Climate Action Plan, 6,000 people rallied at the Capitol under the leadership of Minnesota Youth Climate Strike and called on lawmakers to take immediate action for their future. And every day, people in the city are working to restore green spaces, make our streets more bikeable and walkable, and make the air more breathable. We're all experts on our own experiences. Not everyone needs to have the studies and science of climate change to be a key voice in this conversation. This work needs to include everyone and everything. We need to reconsider, reimagine, and restore in order to allow the next generations to thrive. We need to heal ourselves and the environment at the roots and reclaim our future. The reason most of us are here is because we know that everyone on Earth is entitled to a life of peace and safety. We all deserve the opportunity to live long lives free from unnecessary suffering or deprivation. We cannot speak about justice unless we're always also working to achieve it. In order to build the world we wish to see, we need to be willing to challenge parts of the world that we inherited. An economy that is based on war and competition cannot coexist with an economy based on a healthy climate and environment. The land is not healthy as long as those who live on it are denied their freedom.
The actions we take now will influence the world we live in 2050. Each one of us can contribute to solutions in small ways every day, and collectively, we can transform the whole system. To ensure that St. Paul and Minnesota are ready and resilient, we need to establish equity and justice at the foundation of everything. That means energy-efficient housing needs to be affordable housing. That means that electric vehicle car shares and charging stations need to be available and accessible. That means that I-94 needs to be reconstructed in a way that brings opportunities to the Rondo community and decreases the amount of gas vehicle travel. Our board, CJAB, is committed to projects focused on creating a more equitable and cleaner city. It is a privilege to be a part of this work. Now, without further ado, we would like to introduce Mayor Carter, whose administration from day one has prioritized climate action planning and sustainability. It is because of his unwavering commitment to this work that we are positioning St. Paul to be a beacon for climate resilience work. Thank you for supporting us in this endeavor.
Thank you, Alice. I appreciate it. Good evening. Good evening. Hey, thank you so much for being here. As a matter of fact, give it up one more time for Alice and Dominique, would you please? You know, when I got elected mayor, a mentor of mine pulled me to the side and said, listen, I have bad news for you and I have good news for you. And I said, we'll start with the bad news. And he said, the bad news is that this is a big city of 300,000 plus people. And there's no one person who knows everything you need to know and possesses all the skills you need to possess to be able to lead this city into the future. Even you, me. And so what's the good news? He said, the good news is this is a big city. Over 300,000 people. And in this city, there's over 300,000 people who know everything you need to know and who possess all the skills that you need to have in order to lead this city into the future. So I say all that to say, as much as I appreciate what Alice and Dominique just said, the one thing that I would actually contest is that our climate work is because of me. So many of you, as I look around this room, have been a part of this work, have been a part of this movement far before me. And I have to say, our progress in St. Paul on this topic is because of you. And I just want to say thank you for being the leaders that I can follow where climate justice is concerned. So do me a favor. I know this is Minnesota, so we can't applaud for ourselves. Look at the person sitting next to you at the table and just clap for them. So we're here to have a conversation about climate action and climate justice work in St. Paul. And that's important to me. And if I'm being honest, I'll tell you that when I was a young person, and Russ Stark knows this well because we got elected to the city council together back in 2007. And I used to tell him this all the time. When I was a young person, when I was in high school, when I was in college, I didn't consider myself an environmentalist. I didn't consider myself an activist for climate justice. And it's not that the ozone layer wasn't important. It's not that I didn't like manatees. It's just that I always felt like there were issues like right in front of our face all day, every day that we needed to spend our time on right now. And one of the things that got me so excited that I'm not even reading yet from the page that my staff worked hard to, is that when Alice and Dominique were talking, they weren't talking about things. They weren't talking about the ozone layer. They weren't talking about Anwar. They weren't even talking about trees. And we need to talk about trees in St. Paul, by the way. But I heard a conversation about people. And I think that's what's so important about this conversation. And I also think it's such a central part of what makes St. Paul's conversation about climate action real. That we know that when we fail on climate action, we're not failing some animal off the coast of Florida. We're failing our neighbors. We're failing our family members. We're failing our children. We're failing the same communities that we always get together and say, hey, we should serve these communities better. Because, well, climate crisis isn't going to spare any of us, sorry. In the end, today, the communities that bear the brunt the heaviest are our communities of color, our low-income communities, our young people. And that's just plain unacceptable. I have to acknowledge, while I'm off the paper anyways, I want to acknowledge one of my good friends who I kind of grew up with as a sister at State Representative Maria Issa. It's great to see you. And one of our newest school board directors here in St. Paul, Mr. Carlo Franco. It's good to see you. I also have to acknowledge one of my junior high teachers who's in the room, who used to serve as the state education commissioner and is currently at Fresh Energy, and that's Dr. Brenda Casilius. It's great to see you always. Look, so in just a few weeks, COP28, the annual United Nations Climate Change Conference, will take place. We are one of hundreds of cities across the world holding a local climate forum to help COP28 and lift up the important work that we're doing right here in St. Paul and the work ahead to combat climate crisis. We are building a St. Paul that works for all of us. And clearly our community will not work for all of us, cannot work for all of us, if climate crisis continues to make our air unhealthy to breathe. I'm born and raised in St. Paul. I learned the phrase air quality alert last year. And one of the things I tell you is I spend my time talking in DC and well, if you listen to my kids, I just spend my time talking, period. But I show up places and people look at me and say, you're Midwest mayor, you're St. Paul. Like, what are you doing talking about climate crisis? You're not California. You're not Florida. What are you doing talking about climate crisis? And a lot of things I think that impact us really heavily in St. Paul. We know, if you live anywhere near here, that we've seen some of our worst flooding in the history of our city in the last several years. We know, if you grew up here, that the winters today are a whole lot different than the winters were when I was growing up. When I was growing up, somewhere mid-October it would freeze, and somewhere mid-June it would thaw. And here we are, mid-November, and how many freeze and thaws have we already had? By the way, that has a lot to do with what the streets looked like when you came in. That has a lot to do with that rock slide that we had a couple of years ago. So we experience climate crisis. We don't always connect these things that we're experiencing every day in St. Paul to the climate, to the changing climate, but we better. And this is about us coming together and saying, not only do we connect those things, but we have the opportunity. Because one of the things that excites me, several years ago when the former president of the United States decided that the United States was going to pull out of the Paris Accords, I was one of about 400 mayors across this country that looked up and said, you know what? We're going to keep our agreements. And the great thing about America is if 400 mayors say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. But it's taken, I think, by necessity, something that we've seen as so big that the federal government has to do it, and grown it even bigger to the point where we've realized it's so big that we have to do it. It's so big that you have to do it. It's so big that I have to do it. It's so big that nobody gets to sit on the sidelines while we battle the impacts of climate crisis. So as I talk about our sales tax and the help that we need to build our infrastructure for the future, And it's funny because as we were talking about the sales tax, there are people who say, "Oh, I just don't understand. If you're saying we don't have enough money to maintain the infrastructure we have now, then why would we build new infrastructure?" That's a heck of a statement to make. But one of the things I remind folks is we could just pick up some concrete and put down some concrete in the same way they did 100 years ago. And that would position St. Paul really, really well for 1923. But we better position ourselves for the future. We better position ourselves for transit. We better position ourselves for bike lanes. We better position ourselves for people getting around our community in other ways than single occupancy vehicles. And every now and then somebody looks at me and says, "Hey, this bike lane thing is getting out of control." That's a real phrase. I hear that from people. And I just tell people, listen, we're a swiftly growing city that is poised to add tens of thousands of people to our community over the next couple of decades. And if you just show me where on University we're going to put 30,000 more single occupancy vehicles, then maybe we'll stand down on bike lanes. So far, we don't have any takers. So we created a new position in our Planning and Economic Development Department, the Clean Energy Manager, a role that has been filled by Kurt Schultz. Where are you, Kurt? Where's Kurt? Thank you, sir. Earlier this year, we hired Cecilia Govrick. Where are you, Cecilia? Oh, yes. Tricked me by sitting right next to Kurt. To help us decarbonize our city buildings. Last year, we hired Aaron Kaiser in our Public Works Department to manage our EV charging and electric car share programs. Sorry, let me say that differently. To help us manage the nation's first electric vehicle car share powered by 100% renewable energy. And we're about to post a new position in our Office of Financial Services for a Climate Action Coordinator. So, get your resumes ready because we'll need your help. We're so much better positioned today than we were even just a couple of years ago to take advantage of the incredible, once in a lifetime opportunities that we have with the Inflation Reduction Act that was brought to us by the Biden and Harris administration. It creates an enormous set of opportunities for us to continue that process I was just talking about building our infrastructure for the future. When I first became mayor, one of my top priorities was elevating our work around climate crisis. Here's the thing. We had a bunch of jobs to open up and a whole bunch of positions we needed to hire. And I've never hired somebody before in my life who had spent the last decade preparing their bucket list for what they would do if they got into that position. But when we hired Russ Stark as our Chief Resiliency Officer, we got exactly that. Would you give Russ a big round of applause? And let me tell you, Alice, if our progress in St. Paul is because I'm mayor, more specifically, it's because Russ is the Chief Resilience Officer. He wrote that? Then I agree with it. Russ's commitment to sustainability and climate resiliency was instrumental in developing our Climate Action and Resilience Plan back in 2019. That plan, adopted by the City Council, lays out an equitable approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions citywide to zero by 2050. And calls for us to reduce emissions 50% and be carbon-free in city operations by 2030. And let me tell you, there was a time when 2030 felt like a really far time away, and it was easy to say we're going to do whatever you want by 2030. If we're going to do this by 2030, that means we have work to do. These are big, bold goals. And to help us do this work, we do have our Climate Justice Advisory Board. You may have noticed that this is a theme of our administration. When we need to do big things, we have to do it with people in our community. We have to do it guided by community members. we have to do it in concert with our community members. I heard that loud and clear as you were talking, Dominique. I think that's so important. There's so many examples of the opportunities that we have to be a bigger and better city, because let me tell you, I tell folks every day, my job is to manage the small details that make a big difference. And there's just no way from the third floor of City Hall to understand all those small details. And so I appreciate all of you who serve on our Climate Justice Advisory Board as volunteers, who work to ensure our approach to climate crisis is thoughtful and equitable and benefits the communities and people who will otherwise most heavily bear the brunt of climate crisis. Would all of the members of our advisory board please stand? We thank you for leading us in this important work. This is critical and it's sacred for us, and we wouldn't be where we are without all of you, and we all greatly appreciate that. Tonight you'll hear from city staff, as well as partners from Ramsey County and St. Paul Public Schools about the work that we are all doing together. Can our county and school district partners present this evening please just stand so we can acknowledge you as well? Also city employees. Thank you. So the great news, as I said, this is bigger than the federal government. This is so big that we have to do it. We all have to do it. It's so big that, I open the newspaper and it feels like every week I read an article that ultimately says there's a brand new study that says the impacts of climate crisis are closer and bigger than we thought they were. And that'll only last until next week when we open up CNN and see this study that says, wait a minute, they're even bigger and closer than that. And it's so enormous that it's easy to feel helpless. It's easy to feel small. What can St. Paul do about the global climate crisis? And it's helpful to me to be able to look around the room and know that I'm not in this by myself. And I'm hoping that it's helpful for you, too, to look around this room and see all the partners, the nonprofit partners, the school district partners, the county partners, the city partners, the resident partners, the business partners who are committed to this work together. And what makes it even more exciting as we prepare for COP28 is to know that even St. Paul, us in this room, we're not in this by ourselves, because there's rooms of people just like us all over the globe right now having this exact same conversation. And that excites me greatly. A lot of the information will be shared tonight, but look, we also need to hear from you. We need you to engage. We need you to jump in. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is when I was on the city council, we built the St. Paul Promise neighborhood. And at our first kind of big public meeting, there's all these people coming in, and I was talking to a gentleman who I grew up with, and I said, hey, thanks for being here tonight. And he said, listen, I'm just going to sit back and see if this is what it needs to be for our community. And I said, well, hey, spoiler alert, if you sit back and stay quiet, there's no possible way this can be what it needs to be for our community. And I say that to you too. We need your voice. If you're in the room, it's because we need your voice. We need your perspective. We need your wisdom. We need your expertise. We need your narrative to help us continue to push this work forward. Next year in 2024, we'll be updating our climate action and resilience plan, and your voice will be continually critical. Once again, I just want to say thank you to everyone here tonight. I want to say thank you to our public employees who are in this space. I want to say thank you to our elected leaders who are in this space. I want to say thank you to our Climate Justice Advisory Board members, to all of our community partners for your commitment to building a more sustainable St. Paul. And with that, I'd also like to say thank you to one of my absolute favorite sign language interpreters on the planet, Regina, who does a great job and who has taught me over the years the sign for slow down. So thank you, Regina. who will also be defending her dissertation soon. Who just defended her dissertation. Dr. Daniels, give it up. Beautiful. Dr. Daniels, that puts me in a good mood. Without further ado, I just want to hand it off to my friend, one of my closest advisors. I promise you there has not been 3 days in a row since I've been mayor that Russ Stark hasn't walked into my office and said, hey, I need you to just tell me what you think about this thing. And that is our Chief Resilience Officer for St. Paul, the person who leads our climate action and climate justice work, Russ Stark. Please give him a round of applause.
I broke the cardinal rule that I figured out 15 years ago when we were both running for office, that you never speak after Melvin Carter. But here we go. All right, so thank you to everyone who's come before. We're going to do sort of a climate action speed dating exercise here tonight. And when I say that, what I mean is you're going to hear from a bunch of different people who are doing climate action work at the city, the county, at the school district, kind of one right after the other. I'm going to kick us off briefly. How am I going to advance slides here, Anna? Oh, I got it. Thank you. There's a couple of really particularly helpful pieces in the Climate Action Plan, just to give you kind of a view of the way that we think about the work that we have to do here in St. Paul. The greenhouse gas emissions in the city of St. Paul mostly come from the energy we use in buildings like this one and the energy we use in transportation. So you see it here broken down by commercial and industrial buildings versus residential buildings and then transportation. Literally 93% of our greenhouse gas emissions in the city that emanate from the city come from those sources. And that's the context in which we work. So a lot of our work focused on reducing our contributions toward climate change are in those two sectors. There's a lot of important stuff in waste, there's a lot of important stuff in water, and certainly when we think about things that we consume, those are also creating emissions typically elsewhere, which is why we don't actually count them here. So those are really important too. The second just really kind of foundational piece of the plan talks about the parts of our community geographically and populations that are most vulnerable to the impacts that we're seeing from climate change. And this map, which actually dates to back, it's about 7-8 years now. This is some work that Ramsey County did. But the red areas show you some of the most vulnerable parts of our city on a number of different factors, socioeconomic factors, the urban heat island, flooding, tree canopy, and air pollution exposure. On that air pollution front, you can kind of see that some of these areas are clustered around our freeway corridors as a way of kind of just thinking about what you're seeing here on this map. And so those two pieces and the equity focus of our plan have us focused in these areas overall. And these are some of the areas that you're going to hear from city staff who are doing the work. You're not going to hear about all of it. We're doing a lot of stuff that we're not going to cover tonight. It would take too much time to cover it all. But just broadly, sustainable transportation. The idea that we have to reduce the burden of energy costs for our lowest income residents while we're transitioning to clean energy. Actually just hit send on a federal application to try to do more of that a couple hours ago. Thank you. The work that we need to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from city operations, so the energy we use in buildings like this one and in our fleet. The really important work that we need to do to build up a workforce to move up into these climate jobs that we're going to be creating. The mayor named a handful of them that we've created at the city. There's going to be a lot more climate-focused jobs. There have to be in order for us to meet the moment, as well as community wealth building opportunities that can come from all this work. We've got to improve solid waste systems, and you'll hear about that. We have to work on tree canopy, and the mayor mentioned that there's a lot of work to do there, but especially in our urban heat island areas, the areas of the city that are literally 5 to 10 degrees hotter on a hot day, because they've got a lot of concrete, because they've got less tree canopy, because of a lot of historic reasons. So to ask the question relevant for COP28 that's coming up, how are we doing here in St. Paul? That's sort of the big question on my mind, and maybe the big question on your mind tonight. I'm not going to try to tell you how I think we're doing, because it's really for you all to decide. One of the key things that we need to measure, though, is those greenhouse gas emissions coming out of our city. And you can see in this chart that greenhouse gas emissions are coming down over time in St. Paul, and that's a good thing. However, what you're seeing here, and you might not be able to see it very well, so I'm going to describe it to you. 2017 here at the top, 2020 is the middle line. 2030, this is our 2030 goal, the 50% reduction goal. I'm going to say without a doubt, 2020, the numbers for emissions were lower in part because of the pandemic. So as we are gathering the data for 2021, which is almost done, I suspect it's actually going to have gone back up a little bit, unfortunately. But still, progress being made. You know, there are other groups out there, both in the US and globally, that rate how cities are doing in this space. So I'll name just a couple of them. One is called CDP. I don't even think it stands for anything. It's just CDP. And they, in the last couple of years, they've given us an A grade and A minus grade. The other one is the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. It's a mouthful. ACEEE. And the last few years, we've ranked anywhere from 15th to 20th among decent-sized cities in the country for our sustainability work. And the good news there is that all of the cities ranked higher than us are bigger cities than us. So that's a pretty good indicator. But really that question, how are we doing? The goal tonight is to give you more information about some of the things that we're doing that you may or may not be aware of, and that some of our partners are doing at the other local agencies. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to ask you, we'll ask you a couple of more Mentimeter questions to get your feedback about what you heard, and then we'll have some Q&A. Couple of things I wanted to mention before I hand it off. The mayor mentioned Inflation Reduction Act. The level of opportunity that we have relative to what we saw a couple of years ago is incredible right now in terms of federal resources, and now thanks to our great friends of the state legislature, state resources as well to tackle climate issues. I'm not going to read each of these, but a number of grants that we or our partners have already been awarded over the course of this year. We're waiting to hear back on several others. Significant amounts of federal money potentially coming into our community, in some cases that has already arrived. Looking out, there's these other big programs that are sort of just getting off the ground, federal programs where resources are just starting to become available, the new Minnesota Green Bank that the state is working to set up, lots of federal and some state tax credits and rebates that also haven't really hit the ground yet, so that folks can start to take advantage of these clean energy technologies that we know are out there. The Solar for All program, where the state's applied for $100 million from the feds, and some of that money would, if awarded, trickle down to our communities to help especially lower income residents take advantage of solar power. And then the mayor mentioned the new sales tax, which of course was a big deal just the other day. So congratulations to all of you and to us. It's both not an insignificant thing and also a weighty thing to increase a tax, but the needs are so great for us to reinvest in our infrastructure. And as the mayor said, to not just put those streets back together the way that we built them 100 years ago is a really big opportunity. So tonight, you are going to hear from all of these folks. Ruben Collins from our Public Works Department, Aaron Kaiser, same. Cecilia Govrick, who the mayor mentioned, who works on city buildings. Kurt Schultz, who works on energy and sustainability in our planning department. Susan Young on solid waste. Ana De La Torre is going to give you a little overview of our new climate dashboard that we launched in April, which we think is a great tool for tracking how we're doing. And then you're going to hear from Tom and Angela from the school district, as well as Abby and Rachel from Ramsey County. So, is everyone ready for climate action speed dating? All right, awesome. First up is Ruben Collins. Ruben.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Ruben Collins in the Department of Public Works, Transportation Planning and Safety Division of Public Works. Russ mentioned you never want to talk after the mayor, and I'm learning tonight it's because he's going to steal your talking points. I was going to talk all about how St. Paul is growing, and we need to grow, and we want to grow for a whole bunch of reasons, but none of us want a whole bunch more cars in St. Paul. And so how do we do that? How do we accommodate that growth without the more cars? And we do that primarily through investments in transit, walking, biking, and shared vehicles. And so I'm going to talk through a few of those. We're doing a lot with transit. This image is from Metro Transit. It's an image of all of the kind of major transitway investments going on in St. Paul, and there's a lot of them. If you've been on the east side recently, you know that the Gold Line is under construction, and it is kind of a mess for the time being, but it's going to get better, and we're going to have a great transitway when we're done. We are actively working on G Line. B Line is under construction. We're planning for the H Line. A Line is already under construction. Riverview Transitway, Purple Line, all of these great transit lines are up and coming. I'm really, really excited about the H Line in particular. It's the one line on this map in the planned transitways that doesn't go through or end in downtown. So it's notably different from the rest of these. So I'm really excited about that. This is a picture of one of the bus rapid transit stations. It's fun to watch these just sort of popping up all over town at this time. And so it's a really great thing to see. One of the things we do in my part of Public Works is we do some of the city's long-range planning. So the St. Paul Bicycle Plan, the St. Paul Pedestrian Plan, and the Safe Streets for All Transportation Safety Action Plan. These are important comprehensive documents that guide the work we do. The bike plan tells us where there be bike facilities. The pedestrian plan did something really basic. When we started the pedestrian plan, we did not have a policy document that said basic things like there should be sidewalks along streets. We didn't have that. We do now in the pedestrian plan. And the Transportation Safety Action Plan is really important. It's a data-driven approach to analyzing streets and identifying safety issues. People have to feel safe walking and biking or they won't do it. A plan that's not shown here is the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. That did something really important as well. It said the St. Paul Bicycle Plan isn't really cutting it in one way. It said it's not. It isn't strong enough on what we call separated or protected bikeways, and that was like a kick to the gut because I wrote the bike plan. But it's absolutely right. We are currently in the process of updating our bicycle plan to be much more aggressive with separated bikeways. And the sales tax is going to be a great way to help fund implementation of a lot of those. So really looking forward to that. We do a lot with pedestrian safety. This is a picture of one of our recent mill and overlay projects where we took the opportunity to mill and overlay the street to fix the potholes, but also install bump outs. We had a few other streets where we did medians and other pedestrian safety elements. Where they're doing work anyway, that's the time to make safety improvements to make it easier and safer for people to walk. We try to do sidewalk infill with that. My engineer brain freaks out a little bit and says, why is this sidewalk not straight? But you can see it's winding around trees, and we like trees. Trees are an important part of this too. So this is what we get when we do sidewalk infill, and it's great, and we're going to do a lot more of it. We're building a lot of bikeways across the city. Regional trails, this picture on the left is a regional trail along Wheelock Parkway, and we still have some bike lanes in the street with also part of our mill and overlay projects. They're low-cost, easy ways to repurpose street space to better accommodate more people. This is one of my favorite projects that we did this summer. This is a Safe Routes to School project next to Maxfield Elementary School. Kind of hard to see in the picture, but there are 8 new bump outs at one intersection, which is a really great thing to see. 4 brightly painted crosswalks with an elementary school in the background. A really great project to help people walking to school get there safely, and really happy to see this project and others like it move forward. We had another Safe Routes to School project next to Bruce Vinto Elementary School with some similar things. Right-sizing the street. as we go through and reconstruct streets, we try and do what we call right-sizing the street. This is a little hard to pick out in the image, but I've tried to point out, this is Kellogg Boulevard, where there's a lot of construction happening. You can see the new curb line that I've labeled and the old curb line, and the point is there's a lot of space between them. The street is getting a lot narrower with this project, and that's a great thing to see. And we're using that new space for bike facilities, wider sidewalks, landscaping, things that are furthering our climate goals. And there are other examples across town where we're doing this and looking forward to a lot more moving forward. The last thing I'll mention is shared mobility, the shared scooters and bikes. There's still a lot of work to be done in this area to make sure that these vehicles are actually accomplishing our climate goals. So that's an important area of work for us over the coming years. But this is an important piece. If we don't want more vehicles, more cars, and we're sharing space with more people, sharing vehicles is part of that as well. So, thank you. I think my colleague Aaron Kaiser is up next.
Thanks, Ruben. I'm Erin Kaiser. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the EV Spot Network as well as the EV Car Share program. Give me 1 second here. I'm starting my 3-minute timer. This is speed dating. A quick overview of sort of by the numbers of what the EV Car Share program is, as well as the EV Spot Network. So you see a beautiful hub up on the slide behind me. We have 170 free float vehicles in the system that are made up of Nissan Leafs and Chevy Bolts. Those are leased by the city of St. Paul, which is incredibly unique when it comes to car share programs. The mayor also stole my thunder, talking about the largest electric car share program in the country. There are 70 charging sites, each with 2 dual port chargers, 38 in St. Paul, 32 in Minneapolis, and there's a 35 square mile car share service area where those cars need to stay within. You can start and end your trip inside there. Just for a visual for folks, this is where our car share area currently exists. We're constantly looking for ways to continue expanding this further out. And then as far as just sort of like metrics of how we're doing, so we're coming into our second full year here. And so this is sort of since project inception. It's a little hard to see, but the blue is the public chargers and the green is our car share chargers. So you can see this is a great growth over the course of these months. And all of this energy is powered renewably. So all of this is wind powered, which means that we aren't contributing more to the carbon output of our transportation system. And then we're going to talk about trip count, which also follows that same trend upwards. We have a really important program in the EV Car Share program, which is called Access Plus. It's for folks who can self-certify as a needs-based low-income user, and they receive a lower rate for their car share rental. And then, this is sort of hard to picture really. Oh, the colors are wonky over there. This is sort of hard to picture what this really means, and so I wrote down a couple numbers that I think might help. So we have successfully had over 160,000 trips since the start of the program, car share program. 100,000 of those were rides in 2023. A total of 1.6 million miles were driven in the EV car share program, the EV cars, which is, for those who aren't like me, I'm not able to really conceptualize that. That's more than 6 trips to the moon and back. So that's a huge number. All of that totaling 5,600 metric tons of greenhouse gas reduced, which is huge. Yeah, thank you. It's great. But you saw in the map that we currently don't cover the full city of St. Paul. We want to be able to continue growing this, but we want to make sure that we're growing it in a way that's equitable and that we're bringing along folks who have traditionally been left out of conversations about electrification and clean transportation. So Russ mentioned had on his slide, there's a funded expansion. That's my 3 minutes. There's a funded expansion on St. Paul's East Side, which will bring 5 more community stations and then 5 stations along the Gold Line. So I think it's really clear to see that all these programs are working really closely together, and it's important to have a coalition of folks here at the city, as well as our partners. We partner really closely with the city of Minneapolis, with Our Car, with Xcel Energy, and with our other local, state, and federal partnerships. I think that Cecilia is next. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Erin. So cool, electric cars. Equally cool, municipal building operations. So I'm Cecilia Govrick, the Energy Coordinator in the Real Estate Division of the Office of Financial Services. And my work focuses on tracking the energy use of the city's own building portfolio and finding opportunities to decrease our energy use and the related emissions from over 150 city-owned and operated facilities that total over 2.3 million square feet. So a large building portfolio, a lot of variety in building types, from police and fire stations to libraries to community centers, the whole range. And of course, all these buildings collectively use a lot of energy, about actually averaging between $3.5 and $4.5 million a year in energy costs. So we do have a lot of opportunity to reduce our energy use just to save money, but also, of course, to align with our carbon neutrality goal for municipal operations that was previously mentioned. So how are we doing? Decline is good on this graph. Aaron's graphs go up, that's good. Ours goes down, that's good. So you can see we've had steady progress in the emissions from our municipal buildings from our 2015 baseline year. You might also be able to see that we're getting more progress on the electric side versus the natural gas side of emissions. So of course, we recognize that we have a lot of work to do with reducing gas use in our city buildings. And excuse me, almost 45% decrease so far in our emissions from building energy use. So how are we doing that? Well, there have been a lot of energy efficiency projects over the past decade. The city does have established a green revolving loan for energy efficiency work and has completed over 600 projects. So a lot of different, lighting, HVAC improvements, the whole kind of typical range of energy efficiency work. I'll talk about a few things going on right now and in the near future. Some Russ has already touched on a little bit, but of course, with such a big building portfolio, there are plenty of opportunities to continue doing energy efficiency work, especially as our buildings continue to age, because they don't get any younger, these buildings. So we're just wrapping up a bunch of lighting upgrade projects at some rec centers, 8 different rec centers this past year. There's a big lighting project planned for the Central Library downtown. Some HVAC work planned for the Griffin Police Headquarters building. So some of our bigger buildings have some projects happening soon. You've probably heard about some of the new construction happening in the city, the new North End Community Center, and also with the new fire station, number 7 on the east side. Both of those are being built following sustainable building guidelines. So by design, they'll be at least 80% more energy efficient than a baseline building. Which is great. Again, Russ mentioned a little bit about the Como Zoo project, that some money has been allocated, federal money, for a geothermal project there. We're considering a lot of options to expand on that, to combine that with some other energy efficiency work and make some really good emissions reductions from the operations at Como Zoo. And then lastly, we are also going to be kicking off a new process of developing a plan for how to actually reach our goal by 2030, because as Mayor Carter said, 2030 is coming up fast. So we'll be developing a municipal buildings decarbonization plan in the upcoming year, which will also be funded by federal dollars. So we're looking forward to starting that pretty soon. And I will leave this. The dashboard will be talked about shortly, so I'll hand off to Kurt.
Thanks, Cecilia. Again, my name is Kurt Schultz, and I'm going to speak briefly about energy burden and some of the things that the City of St. Paul is working on to help reduce energy burden, especially for those folks at the lowest income levels, those under-resourced folks. So it might be helpful to begin with a definition. Energy burden is defined as the percentage of household income spent annually on energy. Every dollar that's spent on energy can't be spent on other necessities. There are a couple of components, a couple of factors that contribute to a high energy burden. One of those is income. The lower the person's income, the lower the household's income, they typically, lower income households will typically pay more on their energy each year. Also, the efficiency of the individual's home contributes to it as well. So if a home is in need of insulation or is leaky and there's a lot of cold air coming in the winter, that will contribute to energy burden because it requires a lot more energy to keep that home comfortable and warm. So it's those two things that really combine to impact energy burden. The energy burden, the average energy burden in the Twin Cities is just over 2%. But in St. Paul, we have some census tracts with energy burdens, median energy burdens that are from 4% to as high as 12%. And the city has committed in its Climate Action and Resilience Plan that within 10 years to lower the energy burden so that no St. Paul household spends more than 4% of its household income on energy costs. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that the city is doing to help lower energy burden. These first two things are pilot projects that, if successful, we hope to fund further and expand. So the first one is the Healthy Home St. Paul program. We're using $1 million of federal American Rescue Plan dollars to create a pre-weatherization program. Now, pre-weatherization may not be a term that everybody's familiar with. Weatherization is the process where you bring in an auditor, an energy auditor. They determine what's necessary, additional insulation, air sealing, maybe a new furnace to replace an outdated, inefficient furnace. But there are many homes in St. Paul that can't even be weatherized because of pre-existing conditions. There may be vermiculite insulation, which is contaminated with asbestos, or there may be old and unsafe wiring, such as this knob and tube wiring in the photograph. The weatherization crew won't even enter the house until these pre-existing conditions are resolved. And so that's what pre-weatherization is. It'll resolve the issues like knob and tube wiring and asbestos and many other things that will allow the weatherization crew to come in and do their work, which then will lead to a lower energy burden for the occupants of that home. Another pilot project is called the Electric Heat Affordable Rental Program, or EHARP, and this is a program that the City of St. Paul is working with Xcel Energy, Center for Energy and in the Environment, and Energy Sense Coalition. And the idea here is to identify, again, it's a pilot project, to identify small rental properties that are currently using very inefficient electric resistance. It's the baseboard heating that you're familiar with. It's expensive and is a cause for a higher energy burden for those folks who are paying for it. And so the idea here is to identify initially about 15 buildings, that's about 45 units that have this baseboard heating. The first thing we'll do is weatherize the property, so the insulation, the weather sealing, and so forth. And then we will install what's called a cold climate air source heat pump. These are highly efficient systems that will both heat and cool the space many times more efficient than the baseboard heating. This will make it more comfortable for the occupants and lower their costs, thereby lowering the energy burden. And in some cases, we will also be replacing the outdated and inefficient water heaters with air source heat pump water heaters. And finally, I would just want to talk briefly about the Xcel Energy Equity Stakeholder Advisory Group. Xcel Energy has brought together 41 organizations across its service area to dig deep, take a deep dive into all of their energy efficiency programs and renewable energy programs. And the idea here is to have equity be at the core of each of these programs. And so this group is going through each of the programs and identifying places or ways that it can be improved, each of the programs can be improved upon. The overall goals are to, again, reduce energy burden, especially for those with lower incomes, to ensure that energy efficiency programs are accessible to all, and ensure that low-income and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color customers have access to affordable and renewable energy. And I'm confident that after this process, that Xcel will be amending some of the current programs to better serve individuals or households that aren't being currently served. And I expect that there may be new services provided as well. And next, I believe Susan Young is coming up. Hey, there you go. Thank you so much.
I'm going to ask you where is the
Right here, and
Bam.
my Kleenex.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Susan Young, and I'm the trash lady. It's who I am. I've been that way for 45 years. We're going to talk about solid waste services today. That's everything you don't want, all right? Just putting it right out there. In solid waste and recycling, one of the big things we're trying to do is to increase education for better recycling. Before we went to carts, there was less than 0.5% of contamination in the recycling that St. Paul residents put out. Now we're over 10%. I'm going to challenge each of you to talk to your friends and your neighbors to recycle right. It's easy. Just don't put the bad stuff in there, okay? We're doing lots of events and programs to reduce food waste. I'll talk about that. Events for reuse and recycling. Bam. Bulky items, appliances. In St. Paul, all your appliances are recycled. We take out the nasty stuff, the resistors, the capacitors, bad things, recycle the metals. All right, do I need to slow down? Recycle all the metals. We got a new program that we're collaborating with Ramsey County on. We're recycling mattresses. All that stuff in a mattress can be recycled. So we're pulling mattresses, even the ones that are dumped on the side of the road, we're recycling those. We're doing a lot of swap events. Last weekend, we had an event at Jimmy Lee Recreation Center. I'm seeing some nods. We had over 200 people went through that event. Books, games, music. People were able to bring stuff that they weren't using. Maybe their kids had outgrown that little space game, and another kid, another family could use it. So we had huge amounts of reuse. We've had garden swap, where at our composting events, we've been able to have a swap for garden tools. I'm not using this rake anymore. Somebody else could. I'm too old to use a shovel. It hurts my back. Somebody else can use it. So we've been doing those kind of events. The recycling events, some of you know about our drop-off programs, where we help you get rid of tricky things. At 4th Precinct Police Station, right after Thanksgiving, start recycling your cardboard. You're all getting stuff in big cardboard boxes. Recycle the cardboard, 4th Precinct. That way you don't have to break it down and go into your cart, which you're going to make sure all the stuff in your cart is right. Cool. How many of you know that Ramsey County has a program so that you can take electronics at no additional charge? Yes! It's getting out there. All right. We're teaching people about backyard composting, and we've given folks composters. Either a seeder or a tumbler, so that you can compost in your own backyard. Use that material to grow your own food. You grow your own food, there's not transportation, you know what's in it. Outstanding way to help climate change. We're doing a lot of community classes on how to compost and why. And we've been doing the Food Waste Reduction Challenge. If everybody in St. Paul would reduce their food waste by 1 pound a week, all right, that's like 6 potatoes that you didn't let go bad. All right, 2 of the strawberry containers in a week. If you would reduce that, we could save 9 tons of food waste a year. That doesn't only help local, it helps internationally because of the way we get our food. Bam. There's our food scraps recycling. The folks in St. Paul have worked really hard with Ramsey County to increase the number of drop-off sites for food waste. That material is all composted. Composting is a much better way of managing wasted food than other forms of incineration or just rotting. We also get a really good product. There is going to be a new food waste program that is coming from Ramsey County. County folks that are here, are you going to talk about that? No, we're not. Okay, great. Then I will, really fast. What you're going to be able to do is you're going to call a county contractor. You're going to say, hi, I need food waste compost bags. They will ship them to your house. You will put all of your food scraps in these compost bags. You will put the compost bag every week in your garbage cart at the Recycling and Energy Center in Newport. Really new, cool blue robot will pull those compost bags out of the trash, and they will be composted.
And
all right?
It's free, Jeff.
Pardon me?
And it's free.
It is at no additional charge. All right? Folks that know me know that I'm really big on that because you pay a county solid waste tax. It's at no additional charge. Okay, next person up. There you go. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Susan. Hi, everyone. My name is Ana de la Torre. I am the Sustainability Coordinator here at the City of St. Paul. As you have heard, the city is doing a lot of great work to combat climate change and to improve resiliency and sustainability. However, I know that due to the lack of time, the presenters have not been able to talk about all of their work. So I'm here to encourage you to check out our new Climate Action Dashboard, which was launched earlier this year. So I'll walk you through it real quick. This is the home landing page. Talks a little bit about the dashboard and the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. Because the goal of the dashboard is to showcase all of the work that the city is doing as we strive to meet the goals of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. So as Russ mentioned earlier, we have our greenhouse gas emissions goal. So being very transparent, showing where we were, where we are, and where we want to be. Then we start talking about the actions. So on the left here, you can see we have 47 actions divided by phases and by status. I'll go into that in a little bit. These 47 actions are split up into 6 main categories, which are listed here. And these categories are important. So when you click on a category, for example, sustainable transportation, you get more information as to why it's important. So as mentioned earlier, the transportation sector accounts for 31% of greenhouse gas emissions in St. Paul. Below that, you can get more information about the category itself and the city's goals in that sector. And then we also want this dashboard to encourage people to take their own action. So in each category, you will see how you can take action and how you can reduce your emissions in that category. So let me zoom out for a moment and show you the 6 categories with their actions. The actions are color-coded depending on their phase. So if they are completed, if they are in progress, or if they are late. Then let me zoom back in and show you what an action looks like. So here we have the EV car share program, which Aaron talked about earlier. In each action, you can see all of the information, the progress of the action, the timeline, the responsible organization, where it fits in the Climate Action Dashboard, where it fits in the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, the category and the contact person, as well as all of the information for that action. Some actions have indicators, which are the data sets or graphs for that action. And we have also included a term bank or a glossary where we define words that are used throughout the dashboard. Our goal while making this was to make this as accessible to everyone as possible, not just for professionals who work in the climate field. So because of that, we also want everyone to take their own action. like I mentioned earlier, and be motivated by the work that the city is doing. So please be sure to check out the Climate Action Dashboard. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Tom Parent, and I'm the Executive Director of Operations for St. Paul Public Schools. And I'm joined this evening by Angela Vreeland, who is our indoor air quality and one of the mechanical engineers we have on staff. And we're here to share just a few of the sustainability initiatives that are underway at St. Paul Public Schools. Angela and I have the honor of being before you today on behalf of the 6,000 staff, 33,000 students, and all of the families that comprise St. Paul Public Schools, of which I know many of you count yourselves amongst. And for us to be able to share a little bit about what the school district is doing, at both very localized levels as well as systemic levels. So, for us, St. Paul Public Schools, we have 73 different schools, 73 different campuses across the city, 7.6 million square feet of buildings. We are a large organization. We are in every neighborhood, every community, every corner of this district, and even a little bit of Woodbury, and getting to do all sorts of great things, educating students and, growing the citizens of tomorrow. So being able to look at the work that we do through a systemic lens is so critical for us to be the stewards of the built environment that we know we need to be. And being able to look at that both at really sort of these marquee opportunities, for us, getting to build a whole new school is not something we do very often. So being able to do it well and being able to do it with an eye for the responsibility we have for the environment we are in now and building the school for generations to come. There's more information. Several of our slides do have QR codes in the corner if you want to off-ramp to see more information. But being able to look at the construction of the new Bruce Vento Elementary School and be able to craft a regenerative vision with our community that talks about our role in making sure that the work that we do supports not just energy efficiency, but community resilience, our carbon mandates, and the impact we can have, and largely focus them around themes of nature and play that help the learning process. So for us, being able to look at some of these, really great opportunities to do very aggressive energy goals, very aggressive greenhouse gas goals, look at planting 40 new trees on a site that historically has been not as well served as other parts of the city is great. But it's just one of many things that we get to do as an organization. And I'll hand it over to Angela to talk a little bit more about some of the more systemic initiatives that are underway in the school district.
Good evening, everyone. So I am part of the facilities department at St. Paul Public Schools, and we have an energy action plan, and we have a goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 45% by 2030. And so it somewhat aligns with the city of St. Paul. Hopefully we can hit 50% as well. That's our stretch goal. So in order to achieve this goal, we have some strategies and specific tactics outlined that we want to implement to get there. The strategies are broken out into two focus areas. So facilities and operations, looking at our buildings, the equipment, how to operate more efficiently. And then the other focus area is community, working with our staff and students in the broader St. Paul community and collaborating on energy conservation and behavior change. And really a big part of the plan, the goal of the plan is also to make sure we engage with all of our buildings, all of our staff and students, get everyone involved, and really try to foster a culture of environmental stewardship. So that's kind of our broader plan. Some highlights of things we've been working on as part of the plan, but also just historically. We track our energy use carefully. We use an online tool called B3 Benchmarking to see how our energy use across our 73 buildings is changing over time, and really to help us kind of hone in on which buildings need the most work in terms of energy or water savings. So we have data going back to 2008 that we use to track how we're doing. We also do a lot of work around indoor air quality. That's really my focus, making sure that our schools are as healthy as they can be. We were highlighted recently in the Star Tribune for our efforts there. And we are excited about a new tree planting partnership with Great River Greening. This is in front of the Rondo Education Center and some new trees going in. And we have a brand new geothermal system that was just put in the baseball outfield at Johnson Senior High School. And we have 2 more schools that are getting similar systems very soon. So we're excited about that. Thank you for your time. Any follow-up questions? There's our contact info.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Phillips. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a climate and health planner with St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the work that we've done to develop a countywide climate action framework this year. So our framework builds on the framework that the state released about a year ago last fall, focusing on clean transportation, climate-smart natural land, thriving communities, clean energy and efficient buildings, healthy lives, and clean economy. Our framework builds on the process that the state followed to develop their framework by working with community members, residents, key partners like the City of St. Paul, and working with internal staff who are experts in all of these areas to develop a framework that's feasible for the county to follow, that helps us lower our greenhouse gas emissions, and also pushes us to be more progressive in helping community members adapt to the health impacts or all impacts of climate change. So our engagement process included hiring Equity Strategies, a consultant, to lead online listening sessions so that we could develop a better understanding of what community members are concerned about, through online surveys, collecting feedback from folks who couldn't attend the events that we held, through a couple of really large community conversations, one of which was held in this room a couple of weeks ago, to get feedback on the framework that we've been developing, through writing articles on climate justice that we share with our environmental health listserv. And we're in the process of developing a climate action advisory council who will meet with me on a fairly regular basis to check in on the progress that the county is making and ensure that it aligns with our equitable climate resilience goals. We also worked with experts across our entire department system, one of which is here today, to make sure that everything in our framework is feasible. We worked with students at the University of Minnesota through the Resilient Communities Project to develop a comprehensive community engagement framework, as well as a template for doing department-focused gap analyses of climate action, and an ideal organizational structure for expanding the group of people who can focus their time on climate action work across our county system. We hired the Institute for Building Technology and Safety to do a review of all of our climate-related work to ensure that we were moving towards equitable climate resilience and centering under-recognized and climate-vulnerable populations in all of the work that we're doing now. And we developed a climate legislative action team to develop a legislative platform that would support the work that we're doing. Within our climate action framework, we have a goal that focuses on building an economy that addresses climate change and creates equitable opportunities for people by sharing information about funding resources that are coming down from the feds and the state, by supporting the development of businesses that are pushing our green economy forward locally, and supporting just workforce transitions into the green economy. And that is where I'll hand it off to my colleague, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Mulliner. I'm a planner in Ramsey County's Workforce Solutions Department. We're the workforce development entity for Ramsey County and the City of St. Paul. And so I'm going to talk just briefly about some of the opportunities that we're working on in the green workforce space. So I don't think it'll come as a surprise to the folks in this room that there are a lot of new and emerging and adapting careers that'll be created with all the work that folks before us have talked about. Folks have talked about, all of the building conservation. You need folks to do the jobs to put those HVAC systems in, right? And so we're doing a lot of work in this space. We know that the clean economy jobs are growing 50% faster than overall job growth in Minnesota, and that jobs are really going to be either sort of this adaptive, blended, or totally changing opportunities as we look to the future. And so we are currently working on an inclusive workforce development framework framework that has sort of three different levels of engagement. First is a pipeline strategy. So this is really working with businesses and employers across the county to do more long-range planning, working with schools and exposure events to young people, career exploration events. We have some immediate impact opportunities for employers who need more employees in a short-term setting. We have tools like our Inclusive Employer Toolkit. We have programs that we're supporting in partnership with the city around training folks to be HVAC and insulation installers with partners from CEE who are in the room tonight. And so we have some strategies we're doing in the sort of short term. And then also we work long term with employers to really change their workplace cultures to become more inclusive employers for residents in St. Paul and Ramsey County. And so we have a number of events coming up that we're looking forward to. This event that we're highlighting is about the clean economy pathways, job pathways. And this is really focused on providing information to workforce development professionals and our school partners to really help job seekers and students understand how clean technology, renewable energy, sustainable practices are reshaping our job market and creating new opportunities. And so we're really excited to have some experts in that space who will be coming and sharing opportunities so that we can pass them along to residents and students in Ramsey County and St. Paul as we go. So I think that ends the speed dating portion.
All right, everyone, thank you. We threw a lot at you tonight. We tried to do it in a way that was hopefully interesting and gave you a lot of information. I do want to direct you back to the Mentimeter. We're going to ask you a couple more questions now that you've kind of heard what you've heard. And you'll see those questions pop up. I also quickly want to recognize MnDOT Commissioner Nancy Daubenberger, who joined us. Thank you for being here. And sitting next to her, Climate Director or some such title at the Pollution Control Agency, Kate Canoe. Thank you for being here. We appreciate everyone's joining us. And after you take a minute on Mentimeter, we're going to go into Q&A. I'm going to give you just a minute to focus on your device. All right, we got a bunch of answers coming in. And in a moment, we'll turn to the last Mentimeter question, and we'll start the Q&A here. All right, moving to the last question then. All right. So you're both going to be focusing on your device and on me at the same time. You can do it. No, I'm just kidding. But as you're doing that, are there burning questions that folks have? Want to better understand something that's going on? Yes, right over here.
You seem to have good explanations for how you're tackling the transportation and the residential / municipal buildings. Are you looking at any ways to improve industry efficiency?
Thank you for that question. So the question was, we're working on residential and city buildings. Do we have plans to also address efficiency in industrial and commercial buildings? It's a great question. We don't have significant programs today in the city of St. Paul. Some of our partner organizations do. Offer rebate programs that Xcel Energy and others provide. Folks from the Center for Energy and Environment who are here in the room today provide some of those programs. It is an area of need for growth in the future for sure. One of the things we didn't talk about tonight is our building energy benchmarking program and ordinance that we have in St. Paul that actually requires the owners of buildings 50,000 square feet and larger to benchmark their energy use. And then we do workshops and series to try to give them some ideas about how to improve their efficiency and move toward clean energy. But we don't actually have sort of city program offerings beyond that today. Great question. In the back and then in front of you. Someone behind you.
More in reference to the first two presenters, I think more walking paths and bike paths are great. I'm wondering if there are any plans to disincentivize more driving in cars, because I think more walking and bikes are great. However, even electric cars, which we'd like to switch to, they're still extracting things from the earth. They're still polluting. So are there any plans to disincentivize cars altogether?
Gotcha. Thanks for the question. So the question is, beyond sustainable transportation, are there plans to disincentivize cars and using cars? I would say, and Ruben, feel free to pop up here too, with some more specifics. In general, our approach at the city is, as we are remaking streets and remaking our transportation system a little bit at a time, we're trying to make the ways in which people move around sustainably easier, safer, more convenient. And the natural impact of that is it also makes it a little bit less convenient and a little bit less time effective to drive. And that's just sort of the balancing act in using limited space. I think we generally don't go so far as to say, don't drive, right, to folks in our community. Obviously, there are reasons why people need to drive. There are lots of trips that people need to make where other options aren't available to them. So the answer is yes and no. I would say that we're trying to move the city toward a place where driving is less necessary, rather than doing it sort of like a don't drive anymore, kind of more of a punitive approach. And then there was, yes.
I had a question for the St. Paul schools. Where are we at with electric buses, school buses in St. Paul?
Yes, great question. Tom?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for the question. Actually, electrifying our school bus system is part of our energy action plan within the school district. It is a stretch goal, and I think we need to be real about that. We did apply for a federal grant program last year to start electrifying our school bus system. I think there were 3 buses awarded in the whole state of Minnesota, and we were not one of them. So it's something we have a long-range horizon on and are actively engaged on, but the industry needs to move a lot before we're there.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Oh, there's lots of questions around, so sorry, I'm not going to get you all or in the right order, but go ahead.
Yes. I'm aware that employees of St. Paul Public Schools currently don't have a Metro Pass program. Could that change in the next year?
Thank you for the question. Let me acknowledge. Not on the HR side of things. I know that that's an active point of negotiation with our teachers. I think it's certainly something that we're looking at. I do want to, so yes, it is something we are, I will say, moving our students away from Metro Transit and back onto yellow school buses in most circumstances, which has pluses and minuses, been that way. But it is for employees, it is something that is an open conversation. So.
Thank you. Yeah, right up here in the front.
I'm really concerned we're not moving fast enough to fix this climate crisis. And so when I hate to pick on somebody, but I think I heard the city might spend $6 million on Pedro Park, something like that. I don't know. My point is, if we took that, assuming it is $6 million, if we took that and made the city buildings more energy efficient, we would help the climate and we would reduce the tax burden on the public. So it's a win-win for everybody. It speeds up solutions, less taxes for the public, because the city is spending less money on energy.
Okay.
And we can take care of Pedro Park later, but we'll fix the crisis first.
Thank you for that question. So just to repeat the question was about resources being spent on things that aren't directly related to climate change in the city. There certainly are those. I would, however, give you one counterpoint, which is that creating attractive spaces for people to want to live, work, and spend time in a place like downtown St. Paul that is densely populated and could be even more densely populated could help us reduce our carbon footprint. We need to keep drawing more and more people into these dense environments as places to live and work. And one of the ways that we can do that and have to do that is investments in those parks. So I don't think it's quite as black and white as you portrayed the issue, But yes, there are lots of things that we continue to spend money on that don't directly address the climate crisis. One of the aspects of my job is to try and get more and more of the things that the city is doing as a matter of course be consistent with our climate goals. Yes, back there. Yes.
So I was at a seminar earlier this week, and I heard something about the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers, which is EJ TICTAC is how it's commonly referred to. And I found out that the U of M was actually a recipient for Region 5. So when I was hearing the amount of green jobs that might be produced in the upcoming years, to what extent will the employers and programs here today be focusing on working with the EJ TICTAC to hire and recruit those community members that will ultimately be trained in these more technical jobs for green energy?
Yeah, thank you. So the question was about the environmental justice technical, I forget the TICTAC Center that's going to be at the University of Minnesota. It's being stood up currently. It's sort of brand new. And the degree to which there'll be interaction between that center and efforts to create pipelines of community folks to get into some of these hopefully good paying climate jobs. And the short answer is we look forward to having that resource there at the U to add to the things that Rachel talked about that we're already doing between the city and the county. And I have to say, the stuff that we're doing in this space at city and county is stuff that we weren't doing 3 years ago even. So there's a lot of new efforts underway in this space that are really exciting, and we need a lot more. I just learned yesterday about a new program that St. Paul Water Resources, St. Paul Regional Water Services is doing called the Utility Trainee position, where they're bringing in St. Paul residents. They're actually, they've got a bus. They're picking people up to take them to work because they realized that one of the big obstacles was people don't have a driver's license. And it's a new position, it's a trainee position that can be that foot in the door to some of those jobs that are related to infrastructure and ultimately to climate. Yes, up here.
We know that climate change due to global warming is increasing temperatures, especially in summer, and that probably will be a large demand on energy for air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how you're anticipating that and who you're working with to coordinate that information on future climates?
Thank you for that question. So the question was, with summers getting hotter, there's going to be a need for more air conditioning, and how are we thinking about that additional energy demand and the need for air conditioning in more spaces? It's a great question. We've had a couple of hot summers recently. Until just recently in Minnesota, almost all of our warming trend had been in winter, as the mayor discussed. The next challenge is going to be hotter summers for sure, and heat is going to become our biggest challenge, as well as most of the country, frankly. We don't have specific programs in mind today around addressing the need for more air conditioning. However, the new technologies that we're seeing with air source heat pumps, we can provide both heating and cooling with the same technology in a very, very efficient way, is really promising in order to be able to serve more people with cooling with less overall energy. And so there's going to be a lot of need. It can feel overwhelming, right? Because a lot of this work is going to have to be building by building, literally in every building in the city. We're going to have to be making these transitions. We do have a plan as part of our emergency response and emergency management system for cooling centers around town. Our libraries and rec centers like this one are actually the backbone of that plan, but we're going to need more folks having air conditioning over time for sure. Yes, over here. We're going to wrap it up. Okay. I'm just going to quickly say, you're the last question.
I'll better make it good. Okay. At the beginning, I think there was a mention about grassroots and connectors, and this is maybe the whole group is maybe more of the choir how are we getting down to that individuals, down to the neighborhoods, down to that space, and what's missing? What are you needing?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the question is, you all are the choir, essentially, in the room, and we love the choir. How are we really spreading the message and reaching folks where they are about climate and sustainability? And I would say it's there's an endless need to do more and to branch out in that space. One of the things that the members of the advisory board have been talking about from the beginning is this question. So they're a group of 12 to 15 who are, one way to think of it as an expanded table that the city is using to get closer to people on the ground, how they're thinking about these issues, what their needs are. It's not close enough. We got to keep getting closer and closer. That work is labor intensive, and we'll ultimately need more bodies doing the work. We're also going to have to rely on a lot of you to be those extenders of ideas, of opportunities, because the city can't be everywhere, right? But we work with tons of partners here in this room and beyond, and it's going to take all of us to do that. So thank you. And I just want to wrap us up. I know that we're maybe just a little bit over time, so thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate all the feedback. It sounds like, if I saw right, maybe we're doing a little better than you thought we were, which is good. But we've got a lot more to do. Thank you so much.